What was it like when you did your first exorcism?
Your first exorcism is kind of scary because you're alone. So I'm the lead. Normally when when somebody's mentoring me, I'm just there watching, and they're in charge. So I'm kind of like, wherever this goes, I'll just be present. But I don't have to think about it. I'm just watching. But the first time you're there and there's nobody coaching you, you're always a little nervous. Like, I hope I'm doing this right. And the first one I did, the woman was not getting it. It didn't seem like anything was happening. She was just writhing on the floor in pain and contorting her neck and her body limbs and screaming and sweating and foaming at the mouth. And I'm like, I'm getting to the end of the rite where you pray the prayers of gratitude. And I looked, her pastor was in the room with me, and I look at him and I go, we're just about done here. And she's not better. Like, do you want to keep going, or should we reschedule and do this again? Naively thinking like I could just keep going until it's out. Like that's something that was just complete made up in my head.
Until the devil or the demon is
Yeah,
out.
oftentimes it doesn't matter how long you go, it's not leaving the first try. Just the way it works. Sometimes, but not always. So he looks at me and said, this is horrible. I can't go through this. I can't watch this again. Just keep going. And so I said, okay. Oddly, he had just bought a huge 8-foot painting of Guadalupe that was in the room, hadn't been hung in the church yet. And she was Spanish. So I just looked at her and I said, cry out to your mother for help. And she cried out to the Blessed Mother in Spanish. And then immediately went into convulsions on the floor and was just like up and down and writhing all over the place. And me and the other priest, we had no idea what was happening. I was not praying any prayers at this point. I'm just staring at her like, what is happening here? And then she just stopped and she dropped to the floor completely and was motionless. And I was like, part of me was wondering, is she alive? And kind of got closer and she was breathing. And then she opened her eyes and she was back, completely delivered. Had nothing to do with me or the rite. It was all Our Lady.
Our Lady of Guadalupe.
Yes. And I looked at the priest and said, had we known, we could have started with this, and it would have been over right away. But, it's not a science. You can't just say, oh, every time I'm going to begin with Guadalupe and it'll always happen. But in this instance, that's what happened.
What was she was presenting, what brought that woman and her pastor to you? How did they know that she was even possessed, it sounds like? And was she exhibiting these behaviors even when there wasn't an exorcism that was actively being delivered towards her? I mean, what was the
she
history
had a
with her?
horrible aversion to all things holy, and she formerly was a very good daily communicant, and she went through a cycle of fear about something, and that kind of seemed to be the open door that invited the demons in, and then that just took her down. And she couldn't go to mass, she couldn't go to adoration, she couldn't pray the rosary. She had voices screaming at her all day. She physically lost control of her body, and that's what true possession is. You no longer can control your body; like they take over. But it wasn't 24 hours a day. So when she'd come out of these moments, she would tell her sister, "I need help because there's something taking me over," and that's how she came to me.
When you say there was fear, and I want to explore this because I think part of the goal here is education about. Yeah, the way that we can enter spiritual combat armed in strength, trusting in our Lord Jesus Christ, right? And asking for the intercession of the Blessed Mother, the angels and the saints. And this woman, you said, was a daily communicant. And you said she was kind of dwelling in fears, or she had these fears that were kind of taking over her. And that sounds like that was perhaps an open door for the demonic. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, and I don't want to frighten anybody listening because you can't just suddenly fall into being possessed. But she came from a culture where there were also other things operating in the background, so there could be family members that are dabbling in Santeria and all sorts of other things. And all these factors, it's a very unique situation for every one of us because we come from a unique upbringing, and then we have a unique pairing with demons that are unique. Aquinas says each angel is its own species to some regard. So every single person is going to have a different scenario when they encounter something that's troubling them. And for whatever reason, she became incredibly fearful, and to the point where it was, I would almost say maybe a lack of trust in God. And that's where you get into a danger zone. And
like suspicious, fearful, like she was suspicious of
she
things
was just
like
being oppressed by a spirit of fear that was making her crazy to the point of so fearful of just everything. And when she finally kind of gave into that fear, it just took over. And then that was the beginning of the end until she was liberated. So the lesson there is like, no matter what you're going through, first of all, bring it into the light, because that's when they lose their power, by just declaring, Jesus is my Lord and he is my God and I trust in him. And no matter what you think you're doing, Jesus is the king of my life. And constantly go back to that, Jesus, I trust in you. Seek help from your local priest. Tell your priest, there's something I'm wrestling with. I need prayer. Can you pray with me? Ask your family to pray with you. Try to pray your rosary every day. It's all these little things we can do that help gird us up and keep us strong. But like if I'm having a really tough time, you have to let people know. By hiding it, it only gives those things more power to work on you.